Welcome to Beach Jam Media, your resource-driven oasis with your host, Jennifer Corbin-Carson. Join us each week as we dive into hot topics and essential materials for individuals and businesses. We invite you to get your feet wet and explore life's offerings. From insightful discussions to practical advice, we're here to navigate the tides of change together. Come join us for Beach Jam Media, where knowledge flows endlessly and where the currents of insight never stop. So come on, let's get our feet wet and explore what's waiting for us on the beach.
Good morning, everybody. Glad you're here with us. And without further ado, come on in. Let's get our feet wet. And today we're leveling up. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday.
Yes, happy Wednesday. It's hump day.
It's hump day. I feel like we just started because everyone was off Monday and then Tuesday was like Monday. So now everyone's ready to get back to work for the week.
Right?
It's a 3-day week.
Right?
But
Yeah.
it's almost
yeah.
Friday. And then come Friday, everyone's getting ready for the weekend again. So that's summer in South
Right.
Florida.
Yes. And then, since moving here, we had to change our seasons. So we go outside more in the wintertime. And then in the summertime, we stay in and do more projects inside.
True.
So, yeah, I get it. Well, how is the weather there?
Hot.
Yeah.
The weather is hot and hotter.
And very hot.
But it's beautiful. You can't, nothing to complain about in South Florida. It's great.
Good. I'm glad. Yesterday it was really hot here.
It's brutal. But today you wanted to talk about trauma and leveling up.
Yes. So this is something that I've been struggling with for a while now. And through doing some inner work on myself, and, I've mentioned it before that I analyze everything. So, I analyze the way that, things happen in my life and why am I acting that way? And it just goes on and on. But one day I had an aha moment and it really set me free. So this has been coming up. I don't know. Do you guys realize that sometimes that things come up over and over and over again in the course of like a couple weeks or a month?
It's called a learning moment.
Yeah.
And if you don't learn it, it keeps happening.
Right. Well, and this has been coming up for the past couple weeks. And it just keeps coming up. So I figured maybe somebody wanted me to bring it up. But it's trauma work. And everybody has a trauma, right? Maybe childhood trauma or early adult trauma that we haven't really dealt with. We thought we did, but we really haven't addressed it, forgave ourselves for it, or whoever else that caused that trauma, and dealt with it and moved on. So a lot of times, have you guys been involved with any network marketing companies?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of them that say, okay, what's holding you back? What's holding you back? What's holding you back? Right? Well, a lot of times we sit there and say, oh, nothing's holding me back. I'm fine. We're good, smooth sailing. And then you're going uphill. And you don't know why you're continually going uphill fighting this unknown thing, right? Well, for me, it was a childhood trauma. And I kept telling myself, yeah, well, it's been a long time and I forgive whoever did that to me and I'm moving on. Well, I didn't. Because I found an article on Forbes.com by Laura Garnett. It's 9 surprising things holding you back from being successful. And it's really a great read. Some of it may be appropriate for what you're going through, and some of it may not. But if you have a childhood trauma or an early adult trauma, then you can have a fear of failure, a lack of confidence, feeling unworthy, and fear of what people may think. So, all of these cause these inner voices in your head that say, no, can't do that. No. And for so long, I just pushed through it. Well, there came a point to where I couldn't push through it anymore, and it caused a lot of other problems.
Do you know what the trauma was? Can you identify the trauma?
For me, yes. Yes. And I knew what it was. I just didn't understand how deep it was.
I think there's
So-
some traumas that we have that we don't even consider traumas. And people, I think, consider traumas rape, incest, death in an immediate family, witnessing a horrific crime. But there are little things in life that may cause trauma. Just the way maybe your parents acted towards each other has changed the way you can have a relationship. The way you might have been bullied in school changes how you feel about yourself. And the longer we've been in this industry, the more I've realized those little traumas are traumas, right? We can't minimize anybody's traumas if it impacts their life going forward.
Absolutely. For example, my trauma from being overseas in the military is, and I do struggle with this, but is not as, I don't want to say bad, but the experience wasn't as formidable, I guess is the word for it, as somebody else that was in the infantry in the army in Afghanistan. So that got blown up by an IED. But on the other hand, my trauma is still my trauma. Nobody else can tell you how you feel. And that is not a good way of thinking. My trauma isn't as bad as somebody else's. And that's what a lot of veterans struggle with. For example, the disabilities as well. For me, I have a lot of invisible disabilities. I didn't get blown up with an IED. I didn't get shot. But I do have other disabilities that people don't see. So in other words, I don't have any physical outward disabilities.
So what are some of the disabilities and traumas that you have? I guess we got to go back from childhood to the military. You can identify what changed. Then your military traumas
It's after
to now?
Yes, so I can tell you what changed from my childhood, what happened in my childhood to what happened in the military, to the discovery now. So the thing that I have to remember is that, again, my trauma or my experiences are my experiences. They're my perception, and that's the way it is for me. And I have to deal with what my experiences are according to how I think. But changing how you think is part of the work for trauma work, right? So the fear of failure, we'll go over those again. Fear of failure, lack of confidence, feeling unworthy, and fear of what people may think. That all relates to business, how you perceive yourself to be successful, and for veterans as well. You know, people come on out of the military. It's all of these things come back to work on yourself and how deep it is, right? Because I didn't realize how deep it was. And man, I wish I would have figured that out years ago, but I didn't. And there's a reason for that because that's my path, right?
So, do you think if you had identified how deep it was, there would have been ways for you to overcome it sooner or to work through it, release it?
I may not have been ready. And, I see these posts all the time on Facebook. Tell your younger self something that you know now, or something to that effect. And really, if you really think about that post, would you have really listened to yourself?
True.
I don't think so, because you have to experience things in order to know these things. Well, you're not, if you tell your former self, hey, this is what I've learned. If you're somebody like me where you have to learn by experiencing, you're not gonna listen to yourself. So I find those posts irrelevant for me. Some people might, find them relevant for themselves, but yeah, most people learn by experiencing, and
We
I
all
don't.
learn by experiencing. I mean, every day in
Right.
here, it's a new experience. And we had this conversation yesterday that I was working with one of our crew members, and Freddie says to me, you're the one that has to work with this crew member. And I think it's from my past experiences, just learning as what it is with my background on what I did, went to school for, and where we are now.
Yeah, but you could tell the difference between her handling the situation and how anybody else can try. It's interesting because you go lead a life and you touch on a lot of things like bullying, things that happen in your life that creates what I like to call divots. And then you go to the military. Now I got to tell you, in the military, you came out thinking differently than when you went in, but the ones that love you are also changing. So you got a whole new deck of cards when you come back for everybody. Understanding you, understanding them, all of a sudden it changes. But you went in, you had these divots, and you come out, and there's an old saying in our business that you are afraid to succeed. A lot of people, they hang their hat on that without explaining what it even means to them. So I give you credit for at least admitting that you have things to work on, which is a whole lot better than people hiding it and saying there's nothing wrong.
Right, exactly. Well, that's where I was like a few years ago. And I would go to these network marketing or conferences, and they would all say, what are you stuck? What are you stuck in? How can you get unstuck? I'm like, I'm not stuck. I just want to do this. When in reality, I was stuck. So, I mean, you have to look at what your shortfalls are and see if you are stuck. Because if you've already dealt with your trauma, true to yourself, then you can move on and define that success for yourself, right?
What do you think
Understanding.
what does stuck mean,
Right.
Jennifer? We're stuck that we can't move forward. We're stuck in our belief system.
Yeah, I think it meant for me that I was stuck and couldn't move forward. I could do the work, but it wasn't happening for me. Success was not happening. So, how do you get unstuck? Right? And I think, first thing that we think about is going to therapy, right? Or finding somebody to confide in us, maybe a coach. Because now therapists and coaching are starting to get those blurry lines, right? I don't want to say, go to a therapist when a coach is really your answer, or go to a coach when a therapist is really your answer. So it's whatever works for you, and finding that person is the hardest thing, I think.
Yes.
Other than admitting right? That you have a problem or you want to work on something. That is the next hardest thing, is finding somebody that you click with and has your own values in mind when they're helping you out, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're digging a little bit deeper to help you find that issue that you need to work on, right? So I did find this quote from that article from Forbes.com, and it says, "Understanding your own psychology through good times and difficult times is essential for optimizing your potential." So not only should you be working with somebody through the good times, but also through the difficult times. It's always, everybody's got a BFF, right? A best friend,
I think
right?
the key word there is understanding.
Yes.
If you can master the word understanding, um, and sometimes it takes years to understand what you feel
Mm-hmm.
and comprehend. My grandfather once said to me, instead of changing the game, play what life is giving you and develop change that way, because then change comes from you and understanding what you're going through right now, which is why I love the Reinvented Life Network. I just love it because there are so many different aspects to what all of you bring towards this change. And believe it or not, everything that you talk about, that the other ladies talk about, is actually happening around me here. And this is why I went to Dawn and says, okay, with all due respect, I need you to handle this. And I was understanding enough, to use the word, to come to the conclusion that she's been trained in that field. She understands that field. And she rectified it in 3 seconds. True? So understanding of that sentence is so important. And I tell you, I got to tip my hat for everything that you ladies are bringing forward. The military is just another level that needs attention and needs special care and attention as well in order to get this thing going in the right direction.
And I think people don't understand, if you're not in the service or in the military, the complexities of everyday life in the military. Right? As lay people, we take for granted all the men and women that are serving our country to protect our country, but also you've got families, you've got past traumas, there's situations that arise, sick parents, sick children, whatever it is. Plus you're deep in the trenches of whatever you're doing to serve and protect our country. And these are things that aren't talked about. They're just assumed on a general whole, right? You get lumped into our servicemen and women. But I'm glad you're bringing awareness to, you had a childhood, what brought you to where you are, right? Whether your parents in the service or you felt a calling, different ideals, and then coming out of it.
Right, absolutely. And you have so many different dynamics that are coming into that environment, like you just said. And you have, I'm reiterating what you just said. So yes, you have the day-to-day basis, your day-to-day job, right, in the military. And then, you go home and you have your other job, just like you would in the civilian world.
Right.
But in the civilian world, you don't have that added thing hanging over your head that you can be called up at any moment. I still remember when 9/11 hit, we had to go into work. And I remember going in to the gate, and I was on a compound off site of Norfolk. And I remember going in and seeing the sign, going through the gate and seeing the sign that said, "We're in Delta," which is bad. Something happened so it's obviously it still affects me, but it was just a shock. It was just real. I remember because it was my day off, but we got called in. So we had to go in. I was a single mom at the time. I had to find emergency daycare for my daughter. You know, uh, she was at school. She was at school that day, and I um, woke up to that on the news. So, I had to find, because we were on 12-hour shifts. Who knows when you're going to get off at that point? You might be sleeping there. So what happens? My mom, was 700 miles away. Who am I going to get to take care of my kid? So it's just, that's all part of it. Yes. So it's all reiterating what you just said. But the traumas, if you had a trauma in your childhood, that follows you into the military. So that just compounds things, right?
Absolutely.
So, but I found another part of the article that was really, it hit me. Without recognizing what is going on in your own head, you become a victim of the wiring you've received from your family of origin. So that really hit me, because when people say you need to, and I can't remember, what is that saying, that you stop the familial
The cycle,
cycle. Yes, you stop the cycle. Thank you.
like the cycle of abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it doesn't even necessarily have to be
Cycle.
abuse, right? You stop the cycle of what you learned as a child. If it's not conducive to a healthy family environment, then you stop the cycle, right?
And what's so
Well,
interesting about it, Jennifer, is that you may perceive a trauma, but generationally, when your parents, maybe they had the same situation, it wasn't a trauma.
mhm,
That was just the way you raised your children. And I don't know what your situation is, but certain things
mhm,
were not traumas. It's just the way the generations raised children, like even hitting,
right.
right? Or spanking, whatever that used to
Mhm.
be. That is
Yep.
not a thing that anyone does now, but back then it caused trauma, so we don't do it now. But it was just generationally, it wasn't that anyone knew it was wrong, right? The belt, I think, was a thing. They even showed that on TV and
Oh,
movies, taking out a belt on your children. Talk
yep.
about trauma, right? And that's not even some of the other things we talk about.
Right. Exactly. And emotional.
Right.
What happens when so in my childhood, I had some difficult things, and like you just said, it's generational. My father was born earlier in the 19th century, so my gosh, that's so far away. He would have been 99 this
Wow.
year. So he was brought up, and nobody ever talked about my father's family. Never, until recent. And I'm an only child, so I don't have any cousins that I was close to that could tell me, about my grandparents, because my grandmother died right before I was born. So I never knew her or my grandfather on my dad's side. So he was brought up the youngest of the kids, and grandpa, his father, wasn't really in the picture, is what I got from my cousins today, right? I'm putting the pieces together as I hear stories from my cousins. And so his father really wasn't there. So guess what? He wasn't there for me either. And I took that as something else. Well, I finally had that aha moment right? 51 years old, and I'm finally getting that aha moment. It wasn't about me.
Sure.
It was about how he was raised.
It says wiring. His wiring was a certain way. My father, he was in the National Guard, and his unit was flying out to a mission. It was during the Vietnam War. No, it wasn't Vietnam. What was before Vietnam? Korea?
Yes.
There was something. I think it was Korea. And somehow they got him off the plane because my mother was having my brother or whatever. And that plane perished. That plane perished. And my father was the only one that did not die that day. And my father grew up always asking God, why me? So my father, who used to work in the sugarcane fields on a horse, grew up and he was constantly working from 6 to 9 o'clock. I didn't get to spend time. When I went to NYU, I went to work with my father to find out who he was. And I spent 3 years working with him after I got my degree. And everybody asked me, what are you doing? This is why I understand Gato, which is one of our producers in here. But the object of the aim is that what I notice about my father and my uncles who all served in the military is when there's a fire and everybody's running out, these guys, people in the military, police force, fire department, they run in. And they go in one direction. And they're not going to come out wondering if they're going to come out. They're going to go in to resolve an issue. So sometimes when you have all this trauma, when you have a lot of things going on, your wiring, you have to sit down and sort of understand where your wiring is at. And then use the fortitude and the strength of what you have to overcome the weaknesses that you inherited. Because it does happen. So it's an interesting,
Absolutely.
I'm listening to what you're saying and all these pictures of me growing up with my uncles and my dad and that whole plane thing. I've never said that on the air about my father. I've never told you, but it's a true story. It just goes to show you, life will always sit to teach you over and over again until you learn it. And I think
Until you get
I'm
it.
grateful for the fact that you are learning now a little bit more of who you are and what you do, and you're helping others realize this is a good formula for them to follow as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first thing is, I know we're almost out of time, but there were three major things for trauma work for kind of like a process because we're all military. It's all about processes and standard operating procedures. Helga, that was for you. Focus on safety is number one. You're in a safe place. You are safe. Number two, remembering the trauma and grieving for it. That's very important because if you don't go through the grieving process, it's not going to flush out of your system. And three is reconnecting to core values and what brings you joy. Start doing those things that brings you joy and reconnecting to your core values because that is the center of who you are.
Can you do me a favor and send me those 3 points and let me put a post together for you to put out?
Oh, yep, absolutely.
Perfect.
So,
Because it's important.
okay, well, yes, it is, absolutely. I guess we're out of time again, but we are going to continue. We're going to roll the military appreciation video.
Sure.
Okay. So thank you again for being with us, and I hope you got something out of today. Thank you to Dawn and Freddie for being with me today, and hope Chanel feels better soon.
Absolutely.
So you guys can join us every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't join us live, catch us on YouTube for the replay and just comment replay in the comments and make sure you click that subscribe button. And if you want to get a hold of us, you can email us at beachjammedia. That's 2 M's. beachjammedia@gmail.com. And Thank you again to all the veterans who have come before us and paid the ultimate price.
Thank you.
Thank you
And
for
we
your
will
service.
see you at the beach.
In the calm of early morning, when the day begins anew, we pause to reflect. May holds a special significance beyond just being another month. It is time for solemn remembrance, gratitude, and honoring those who've made tremendous sacrifice for our freedom. To all who served in the military, across all branches, and the National Guard, to the veterans, and to the families who support them through thick and thin, we express our heartfelt thanks. Your courage, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication inspired us deeply. As we commemorate Military Appreciation Month, we recognize the importance of standing by our newest recruits. Those brave individuals venturing into an unknown, responding to duties called with determination, deserve our utmost respect and guidance. Equally important is our commitment to support those actively serving in the Air Force, Coast Guard, Army, Navy, Marines, Space Force, and National Guard. Whether deployed abroad or stationed at home, they carry out their duties with honor and integrity. It is our responsibility to ensure they have the resources, care, and unwavering support necessary to fulfill their missions. So, as we observe Military Appreciation Month, let's unite in gratitude and solidarity. Let's honor the past, support the present, and inspire the future. To all who serve, have served, and those who stand beside them, we extend our deepest appreciation. Happy Military Appreciation Month.
Thank you for tuning in to Beach Jam Media with your host, Jennifer Corbin-Carson. We hope today's dive into hot topics and valuable resources left you feeling refreshed and inspired. Our mission is to keep you informed and engaged as we ride the waves of what washes up in life together. Until next time, stay curious, keep the conversation flowing, ask questions, and let the glisten of the shoreline guide your journey. Goodbye.